Imagine it's 9:00 a.m. on a Tuesday. You're a software engineer, and you've just logged on to your morning stand-up meeting for your company.
Right, just a totally normal morning.
Exactly. You give your status update, everything is completely normal, but right off screen, you have a second laptop open running a completely different meeting for a totally different company.
Oh, man, yeah.
And then at noon, you're going to log into a third system to, complete tickets for yet another employer.
It honestly sounds like an absurd workplace comedy, right?
Yeah.
But we are looking at a very real scenario here. This is pulled straight from a 2022 online forum post in our source material today.
Yeah, and this single engineer wasn't like freelancing on the weekends. He wasn't just consulting on the side. He held 3 simultaneous, formal, contracted corporate roles.
That is just wild.
Right. And he was quietly raking in a combined salary of over $300,000 a year without any of those 3 companies knowing the others even existed. So, welcome to our deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Our mission today is to really explore the wild, highly clandestine world of job stacking. We're looking at a phenomenon that just exploded in the post-pandemic workplace.
It really did. It's completely upending traditional ideas of productivity and, well, redefining what it actually means to hold a full-time job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we are looking at a fundamental structural change in the digital labor market. I mean, this isn't just a handful of rogue opportunists gaming the system anymore.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because I think when people hear working 2 jobs, they immediately think of the classic hustle.
Right, like working at a bank during the day and picking up shifts at a restaurant at night.
Exactly. But job stacking is an entirely different beast, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. What you're describing with a restaurant is traditional moonlighting. That's secondary employment. It happens during off hours, and, often the primary employer is fully aware of it.
Might even approve it.
Right. Job stacking, or overemployment as some call it, is about holding concurrent full-time roles where the work hours literally overlap.
So you're double booked.
You are theoretically on the clock for Company A and Company B at the exact same moment. And the defining characteristic that makes it work is deliberate concealment.
So the secrecy is the whole point.
Exactly. The entire arrangement relies on secrecy.
And the reason we are bringing this to you, the listener, is because whether you are a manager tearing your hair out, trying to understand where your team's productivity went,
which is happening a lot right now.
Right, or you're an employee navigating this modern landscape of workplace loyalty, this trend matters.
It matters massively because it redefines the psychological contract of work.
Huh.
I mean, the unwritten expectations between an employer and an employee are fracturing in real time.
Yeah, the physical presence in an office is just no longer the metric for commitment.
Exactly. And we are being forced to figure out what a fair exchange of labor actually looks like in a digital world.
So it brings up a really tough framing question. If someone can pull off 3 jobs at once, is that a failure of the employee's ethics or, a failure of the employers to give them enough to do?
Oof. Yeah, that tension is the core of the issue right there. To understand how we got here, we really have to look at the specific environmental conditions that allowed this hidden economy to flourish so rapidly.
Let's get into the numbers then. According to a 2023 Resume Builder survey of full-time remote workers, about 8% report currently working multiple full-time remote jobs simultaneously.
8% is a huge chunk of the workforce.
And another 7% say they've done it previously. So we're talking about 15% of the remote workforce having dabbled in this.
Wow.
And the data shows it's overwhelmingly concentrated in the tech sector. Software developers, IT professionals, data analysts.
Well, the mechanics of those specific roles make them perfect targets for stacking, honestly.
How so?
They rely heavily on asynchronous communication. It's mostly project-based deliverables. And critically, they operate in an industry with a massive skill shortage.
Oh, so they have leverage.
Exactly. When a company is desperate for engineering talent, they don't have a lot of leverage to dictate how the work gets done, as long as it gets done.
That makes sense.
We also have to look closely at the demographic drivers here. We are seeing this heavily concentrated among millennials and Gen Z workers living in high cost of living metropolitan areas.
Right. These are generations that entered the workforce during massive economic crises.
Yep.
And they're carrying just unprecedented student debt.
And frankly, they've been shaped by a very different labor market. Yeah. I mean, they watched widespread layoffs happen while companies posted record profits.
Right. The loyalty was gone.
The traditional sense of employer loyalty was broken long before they decided to open up a second laptop.
But even with the motivation and, the broken loyalty, the logistics just seem impossible to me. How is there literally enough time in the day?
Well, that's the big secret.
Which brings us to a piece of the source data that completely blew my mind, the capacity gap.
Oh, yeah, this is wild.
A survey of remote workers found that 38% of them need less than 40 hours a week to do their full-time jobs.
Think about that. 38%.
And 12% need fewer than 30 hours.
The capacity gap is the engine powering job stacking. I mean, if you are highly efficient or if your company operates with agile methodologies where you are constantly waiting on other departments for approvals,
Just sitting around for a sign-off.
right, waiting for handoffs, you generate hours of invisible free time.
It's like finding a glitch in a video game where you can farm gold twice as fast because the game doesn't realize your character is completing two quests simultaneously.
That is a perfect analogy.
You're just waiting out the timer, handing in the same deliverables, and reaping double the rewards.
What's fascinating here is the underlying economic driver of that behavior.
Hmm.
If we look at Bureau of Labor Statistics data over the past 2 decades, real wage growth has severely lagged behind productivity growth.
Especially for knowledge workers, right?
Exactly. Employees are producing more value than ever, but their paychecks haven't scaled proportionally. So workers have started to view employment as a purely transactional exchange.
Just deliverables for cash.
Right. The relational commitment, the idea that you owe your company your undivided focus just because they pay you a baseline salary that is just evaporating.
But doubling your income without doubling your actual working hours sounds like this perfect victimless setup.
Right. Sounds great on paper.
But the math on that free capacity falls apart the second you look at human cognition. I mean, if 38% of workers have all this extra time, the assumption is they can neatly divide it. But the organizational damage is massive.
Oh, it's huge. Let's look at the basic cognitive reality here. The myth of multitasking.
It's a total myth, isn't it?
Totally. Task switching heavily degrades our cognitive resources. Research shows that when you divide your attention across complex, unrelated tasks, you suffer a productivity loss of 20 to 40%.
Wait, let me play devil's advocate for a second.
Sure, go for it.
If I'm just sitting on a Zoom call with my camera off, passively listening to a quarterly update, how much cognitive load is that actually taking? Are these stackers really trying to code deep infrastructure during a meeting? Or are they just coasting through the boring stuff?
Well, even passive listening drains cognitive load because your brain is actively filtering information for relevance. I mean, if your name is called, you have to respond instantly.
Oh, right. You can't just zone out entirely.
Exactly. And the data shows 45% of remote participants are already multitasking during regular meetings, which completely destroys their information retention.
Just totally gone.
Now imagine a job stacker sitting in 2 meetings at once, monitoring 2 different chat channels. The retention isn't just degraded, it's practically zero.
And they have no time to actually focus.
Right. Cal Newport's research on deep work shows that knowledge workers need about 90 uninterrupted minutes to achieve the flow state necessary for high-quality creative output.
90 minutes.
Yeah. Job stackers inherently fragment their attention into tiny reactive slices. They fundamentally lack the capacity for deep work.
Or even worse, their fragmented attention crosses the line into a catastrophic legal liability.
Oh, this part of the source material was terrifying.
Yeah, our text highlights a specific disastrous anecdote about a software developer who was secretly working for a company, A&D, its direct competitor, at the exact same time.
That is the ultimate nightmare scenario for intellectual property.
Truly, this person was participating in strategic planning for both companies, contributing to product development across competing platforms.
Just unbelievable.
And they only got caught because colleagues noticed identical technical approaches appearing in the competitors' products.
Wow.
They weren't maliciously stealing data. They were accidentally leaking trade secrets just because their brain was bleeding code from one job's repository into the others.
And that brings us to the immense damage inflicted on the individual, too. The dark side for the worker is severe.
The burnout has to be insane.
It is. You aren't really coasting through 2 30-hour jobs. You're often working 70 to 80-plus-hour weeks just to keep up the charade when deadlines inevitably collide.
Because eventually, both companies are going to need something urgently at the same time.
Exactly. And burnout research by Maslach and Leiter shows that burnout risks spike non-linearly once you cross the 50-hour-a-week threshold. The physical toll is real, but the psychological stress is heavier.
I can't even imagine just maintaining separate calendars, different email systems, totally separate professional identities across different time zones?
The immense cognitive load of the deception itself is what breaks people. I mean, the constant vigilance, the fear of sharing the wrong screen on a video call,
Oh, that would be
or
terrifying.
sending an internal document to the wrong Slack workspace. It creates massive, persistent anxiety.
But okay, if we go back to that earlier stat that 38% of people are genuinely finishing their assigned work in 30 hours, why should the company care if their attention is divided the rest of the time?
Right, the who cares argument.
Didn't the company get exactly what they paid for? The tickets are closed. The code is shipped.
Well, that assumes the value of an employee begins and ends with closed tickets. It misses the unseen fabric of how organizations actually function.
What do you mean by that?
When an employee is job stacking, the company loses their availability for spontaneous collaboration. They lose the casual mentoring of junior staff. They lose team cohesion.
So all the in-between stuff.
Exactly. Authentic workplace relationships require presence, and job stacking inherently precludes that authenticity. You can't deeply engage with a team to solve an unexpected crisis if you're constantly hiding half of your professional life from them.
So the closed tickets are just the baseline deliverables. The rest of the salary is essentially paying for the connective tissue of the company.
That's a great way to put it.
So if organizations are realizing they are losing out on that authentic engagement, how do they stop job stacking without turning their company into a dystopian surveillance state?
Well, the first step is realizing that traditional input-based tracking, literally just measuring the hours someone is sitting at their desk, is entirely obsolete in a remote environment.
Right. Think about your own last performance review for you listening. Were you praised for the actual impact of the project you delivered, or were you just thanked for always being fast to reply on the messaging app?
Exactly. If a company manages by the green dot indicating you're online, they are practically inviting job stackers.
It's just gaming a metric.
Companies have to adopt outcome-focused performance management. You evaluate employees strictly on what they produce.
And our sources point to GitLab as a prime example of this.
Yeah, GitLab is fascinating here. They operate fully remotely, and their entire performance framework is based on results, not hours.
Purely outcome-driven.
If someone hits their ambitious deliverables, GitLab doesn't care about their exact daily schedule.
Automatic, the parent company of WordPress, does something similar, right? They measure shipped features, bug resolutions, and customer impact without using any activity monitoring. But because they measure outcomes so rigorously, their standards are so high that job stacking becomes functionally impossible.
That's the trick. You literally cannot meet their bar if your attention is divided.
It's like hiring a ghostwriter. If you pay a writer to just sit at a typewriter for 8 hours a day, they might stare at a blank page or play solitaire.
Right.
If you pay them for a finished, brilliant chapter, it doesn't matter if they wrote it in 2 hours of extreme focus and spent the rest of the day hiking.
Exactly.
But if they are trying to write 3 different books for 3 different publishers at the exact same time, the chapters will be incoherent and they'll get fired for poor quality.
Right, so focus on the chapters.
Mhm.
But alongside outcome-based metrics, we also see a necessary push for transparent communication.
Transparency is huge here.
It is. Microsoft updated their policies to explicitly allow for secondary work, like teaching or consulting, as long as it is disclosed and cleared for conflicts of interest.
And Salesforce introduced quarterly expectations conversations, right? To normalize talking about workload and outside professional activities.
Yeah, it completely removes the fear of retaliation. If we connect this to the bigger picture, surveillance destroys trust while transparency builds it.
Dell Technologies does something cool with this too.
Yeah, they rely on periodic conflict of interest verifications instead of oppressive spyware tracking mouse movements.
So no weird tracking software.
Right. It's a risk-based monitoring approach. You just periodically affirm you aren't working for a competitor. It preserves the adult relationship between employer and employee while protecting the company's baseline interests.
But defensive moves like verifications and performance metrics only go so far, don't they?
True.
The ultimate goal shouldn't just be catching people or making it too hard to cheat. How do you build an organization where people simply don't want to stack jobs in the first place?
The most effective antidote is a combination of culture, flexibility, and adaptive governance. It turns out, paradoxically, that legitimizing flexibility completely removes the need for secrecy.
Oh, I love this idea. To stop people from working 2 jobs behind your back, help them work 2 jobs out in the open.
Exactly. Look at Deloitte's mass career customization framework. It allows professionals to formally choose part-time tracks with proportional compensation.
That's so smart.
And PwC has flexible talent networks, which let employees openly embrace portfolio careers.
So if you just need extra income to pay off student loans or if you want intellectual variety, these companies are saying do it out in the open.
Right. When you remove the threat of termination, the clandestine thrill and the massive anxiety disappear. The employee can actually manage their time effectively instead of hiding it.
But what about rebuilding the psychological contract for the people who just want to feel connected to their primary job?
That's where purpose comes in.
Right, we've got companies proving that if you invest in the whole person, they stop viewing the job as a purely transactional ATM. Patagonia famously gives their people paid environmental activism leave,
Yeah, that's incredible.
and LinkedIn gives employees in-day a dedicated day every month just for personal growth and learning.
That signals an investment beyond immediate productivity extraction. Zappos actually goes as far as offering to pay new employees to quit after their initial training.
Wait, really? Pay them to quit?
Yes, they only want people who are culturally committed to the team. If someone is just looking for a transactional paycheck to stack with another job, they take the cash and leave immediately.
That filters out the stackers right away.
And Salesforce uses their 1-1-1 philanthropic model, dedicating equity, product, and employee time to charitable causes.
So when work provides a sense of meaning and authentic community, treating it like a disposable, interchangeable time-for-money swap becomes deeply unappealing.
It changes how teams operate on a structural level, too. The deep dive sources highlight distributed leadership as a massive deterrent.
Like what Spotify does.
Exactly. Spotify uses cross-functional squads, and W.L. Gore uses a lattice structure where employees essentially answer to their teammates rather than a top-down boss.
That raises an interesting point about peer accountability.
It does. In a traditional hierarchy, a job stacker only has to fool one manager who might only check in once a week.
Very easy to fake.
Right. But when your standing in a company depends on peer assessment and collaborative daily relationships, you simply can't hide disengagement. Your team relies on your specific expertise.
They will notice you aren't pulling your weight long before a manager checking a timesheet ever would.
Absolutely.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Giving employees more autonomy, more transparency, and relying on peer relationships actually results in less deceptive behavior.
It's totally counterintuitive for a lot of old school managers.
The tighter a corporation grips with surveillance, the more employees slip through their fingers into secrecy. Give them a meaningful team to belong to, and they stay.
And organizations need adaptive governance to manage this continuously evolving dynamic too. IBM uses Agile HR, treating workplace policies like software that gets constantly tested and updated based on feedback.
That makes a lot of sense.
And GitLab publishes its entire employee handbook publicly. They use what the software world calls merge requests, meaning any employee, anywhere, can submit a proposed edit to the official company rulebook.
So the rules evolve alongside the workforce, rather than stagnating until employees feel forced to break them.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? If we pull all these threads together, job stacking isn't just a story about greedy employees hacking the system.
Not at all.
It's a massive, glaring flare in the night sky, indicating that compensation, workload capacity, and organizational purpose are fundamentally out of alignment in the modern remote workplace.
100%.
Spyware and surveillance aren't the cure. Authentic engagement, transparent expectations, and rigorous outcome-based management are.
I would encourage you, listening right now, to take a hard look at your own work life. Ask yourself, are you currently being evaluated on your actual output, the real value you bring to the table?
Or are you just being evaluated on your perceived availability?
Exactly. Because if your organization's primary metric is how quickly you respond to an email, your psychological contract might be much more fragile than you think.
That fragility leads to some wild possibilities for the future. I want to leave you with a final, forward-looking thought that builds on everything we've discussed today about the capacity gap.
Oh, this is a great point.
Right now, the data says it takes some people 30 hours to do a 40-hour job. But artificial intelligence and automation tools like ChatGPT are radically accelerating knowledge work every single day.
It's moving so fast.
What happens when that 30-hour workload shrinks to 15 hours? Will the capacity gap become so massive and the output so incredibly fast that job stacking eventually sheds its deceptive roots entirely? Think about our software engineer from the beginning of the deep dive. In the AI era, will holding 3 concurrent full-time jobs stop being a fireable offense and just become the completely standard, openly accepted model of employment? Something for you to chew on long after this deep dive ends.